This is the Brother 587. This is one of the machines where the design selection is made with these 8 buttons. This particular one was made for sale in Japan, and you will notice that various places you would expect to see words, there are instead, well, they are words, but they are not in English. That is no reason for concern, because there is a manual for this machine that is in English, and you can make your own labels or do what a previous owner has done here. Mark those as tuck buttons. These, by the way, are part buttons. 1, 2, and 3, these positions are pretty self-explanatory. And if I'm working from memory here, but the back position here is normal knitting, the second one is tuck, and the all the way forward one is MC for Fair Isle knitting. These levers are on some models that are similar to this one are over here, but they work in exactly the same way. So what you are looking for as the owner of a 587 is a 588 manual in English. It's actually a very good manual, but like all manuals, reading through it can make your eyes cross. So in this video series, we'll do some talking about it, and that may make it easier to take the whole matter in. Here are the clamps for this machine. Well, this is one of them. This is the right-hand clamp. The left one is on the left, of course. I'm going to try to twist and turn so you get a look at matters. These greatly resemble ribber clamps on some other models of machine, but they are in fact the main bed clamps for this one. And although the machine will knit sitting flat on the table without clamps, especially if you put it on some non-slip stuff like that rubbery drawer liner, this angle was designed to be its knitting position. This model comes with lace rails and a lace carriage. There's one of the holes for a lace rail, and here is the other one. Let me turn this and get you a better look at that. Let's try to insert it. Takes a little bit of wiggling. And there it is installed. The function of this is to give the carriages someplace to sit out of the way of the knitting when we use the lace carriage. The lace carriage will usually sit on one side and the main carriage on the other side, so that you have the whole width of the bed to knit on. Looking at the lace carriage, it's got these little wheels in the front. The silver part that's sort of like a sinker plate is in the front. Here's the underside. And the only function of this carriage is to ride along and move stitches from one needle to another. The actual knitting is all done by the main carriage. Let's put it on. Cap the front of the bed, and you hear it pop into position at the back. I'm pretty sure this is what was clicking, or actually something beneath there. Let's get it off. There it is again. So it's a very definite popping into place feeling when you get it. By the way, both the handles on both carriages screw all the way off and are usually received separate, packed flat, so that the carriage is flatter in the box, in other words, and you have to screw the handles on. And the lace carriage is labeled L, in case you were going to have the slightest trouble remembering what was what. Earlier, we talked about the basics of the lace carriage and took a look at it and looked at how to mount it. Now let's watch it actually transfer lace. It's going to transfer the stitches that are on those needles in B position to the next needle over. And which direction it transfers depends on the direction from which you knit. So I have hand selected, in this case, 2 needles to B position, and each of those stitches should be transferred to the stitch to the left. And they were, except one was dropped. Lace has very specific requirements. It's a little bit finicky, and that's not just on this machine. You can see here where I've been experimenting with exactly how to set things so as to get successful transfers. This last row, I got all 3 successful transfers. In this case, that meant that I had to go up half a stitch size from where I was. The stitches must be the right size, not too small or too tight or too loose, basically is the way to describe it, because the mechanism of the lace carriage actually pushes this needle over and dumps the stitch on the next needle. So you can see that's placing some stress on the machine, and the right size stitches make quite a difference. Also, weight is essential whenever using the lace carriage. I'm thinking, in my experience, that's on every machine. I cannot think of an exception. So at this point, I would move these weights up. I'm using such a small swatch that 2 claw weights are doing the trick. But what you're really supposed to be using is the all the way across the bed cast-on comb with claw weights hung upon it. Another thing is moving the lace carriage at a steady, even pace, and of course making sure that it's clean and oiled. Now what I just did, there was nothing to transfer, and because of that, it just moved across as a free pass. Nothing bad happened. Now, here's the secret to getting things to select to B position. This is the position we normally work with. But for knitting lace, when you only want things to come out to B position, push it to there and watch what happens. B position. Now I'm going to shift it and see if these will come on out farther. See? When I went to the other position, the same needles emerged farther, but we want them in B for lace transfer. Okay, I've been troubleshooting steadily along because this is a new lace carriage to me also, and voila, we have success. And here is what I have discovered, and we'll show you. Correct stitch size, nice smooth yarn. Fuzzy yarns are much, much harder for the lace carriage, as are slubby yarns. Use the machine to select to be positioned, because when you do, watch what happens. It's hard for me to get a shot of this, but do you see that the latches are still beneath the stitches? When I manually moved to B, sometimes my stitches had gone behind the latches, which is why one dropped off when I did that and is not doing so now. And it appears to be quite important that the stitch remain over the latch. Otherwise, apparently, the lace carriage is unable to transfer. So that would explain why I was getting some random dropping that I couldn't understand. Some of my stitches must have been behind the latches and others not. Now I'm going to be really brave and do this in front of your eyes. And look, every single one transferred just as it should. They should also transfer going the other direction if I selected and moved the lace carriage to the right. So we are going to bravely try that too. Let's do a couple rows. The knit carriage always does the main knitting, of course. Now I'll go set up the lace carriage on the left. Lace carriage is on the left. We'll set the needles. I really don't want to move this end one, so I'll push that needle back. And it looks great. Oh boy, this is a wonderful lace carriage. Knowing what we now know, I can manually put a needle into B position, and I should be able to get it to work as long as I don't draw it too far forwards. The stitch is still on there, so let's see. And voila. The reason I bring this up is sometimes for a small motif of lace, it's easier to just hand select. I've always thought so, but it doesn't mean you can't use the lace carriage. I transferred this stitch last time, knitted 4 rows. Now we'll do 1 stitch to either side and see about making lace holes there. Worked great. And on we go. This is how I make diamonds. I'll show you one more and you'll get the idea. Last time this stitch and this stitch were transferred. So if I do the ones to the outsides of those two, put these back in ordinary working position. Now we should get holes across. It's working perfectly. And now you would have a choice. Do you keep going out farther? Or do you start working back towards the center? Okay, a quick review before we go of how lace works. This needs to be seated firmly. This is the release button, the turquoise button. Clicks into place. Use the back position on this needle when selecting so that when you ratchet, the selected needles will only come to B position. One thing you didn't see us do was clean and lubricate underneath here. I took a glance and I didn't see anything wrong, so I just lubricated. I had some trouble and Jack took a look and found some sneaky grease hidden someplace in there, got it out for me, and after that things started working much better. If an end needle selects, push it back to working position because we do not want to transfer away from the end stitches. The carriage works the same from left to right, so be mindful of where you start it because for some lace, direction of transfer makes a difference to the pattern. These things are listed in the manual and there are quite a few pretty lace patterns in the manual, but this is just to help you bring it all to mind. The lace carriage does not knit, it only transfers. The main carriage does all the knitting. So if you have a transfer do the transfer, then knit the next rows, then do the transfer, and so on. I think that is about all there is to it. Let's look at these settings. They're not terribly important, obviously, because I don't really have them set any particular way, but 1 would be the logical place to leave them. No buttons. Do engage the tuck brushes. It helps seat the new stitches. And this dial is on the all the way back position. Happy lace making.